did. Alright, so let's have Eryn do the narrating, and then we'll have Nancy do Alco. Well, actually, no, let's change it up since Nancy wasn't here last time.
Sure.
Okay.
The moon did not wait for dawn to set. The ornamental texture of the fairy tale kingdom faded away. All of the illusions returned to the way they were before. From the ostentatious chords reverberating through the streets, to the puppets welcoming their guests. Peace and quiet reigned once more over a forgotten kingdom, never to be awakened again. Out flickered the embers of a late night dream, even the electric lamps that illuminated the park. Together they watched it disappear. Sojiro lay on the ground, desperately gasping for air like a fish out of water. The curse of the exploding egg had numbed his pain, and he was understandably exhausted after all he'd experienced. He looked like he could be blown away by the lightest of breezes. While Aoko was also exhausted, she was still in better shape. Focused on taking deep, even breaths, she was already working to recover her strength.
So,
She addressed Sojiro indifferently as her gaze remained on the amusement park. The abruptness of it was a bit theatrical in nature. She wanted to look at him as she spoke, but her pride was simply too great.
you did something kinda amazing, didn't you?
The moment she had accepted death had seemed like an eternity. She was beside herself in shock at how indifferent she had been as the shards rained down from the moon. But a reassuring voice had snapped her back into reality. Why did he do it? What was he thinking? What moronic things had he done to pull it off? She had no answers for these questions, lying on the ground as she was. All she knew was that he had more than made up for his failure in the House of Mirrors and then some, in those fateful final moments. She addressed him, hoping to find answers, but found herself unable to probe any further. To dig any deeper would feel like defeat, which is why it was so unlike her to ask him in the first place. Lucky for her, Sojiro had neither the capacity nor sensitivity to understand how egocentric she was being.
Amazing. You were pretty amazing. Oh, Awazaki.
He stuttered between labored breaths. It was taking him so much effort just to breathe that he could not address her properly. She watched him out of the corner of her eye. Thinking back on it, the boy had performed the same role each time. Each and every time, he did what he could in spite of his fecklessness. That's an Irish saying, and I'm so happy it's here.
I never heard that. Define feckless. Let's see. Lacking initiative or strength of character. Or irresponsible.
Sometimes it can also mean that you're lacking in wit.
Yeah, that's Sojiro.
Yeah, it does make me wonder sometimes if the translators are UK or Ireland based.
Right? It was far more admirable than her nearly suicidal tactics, even if she did defeat her opponent. He did not even recognize how extraordinary his last act of courage was.
Here's an idea. Wait, what if I did this to indicate Here's an idea. If I help you kill that thing, will you let me go?
At the very least, he had the courage to keep trying whatever he could.
Hmm.
A spectator might have viewed him as a supporting actor. His actions were not exactly memorable, but the lead actress he supported did not see it that way.
Well, I don't really want to admit it to myself, much less say it out loud, but
Such inspired actions were wasted in a supporting role. This guy really pulled off the impossible. It was so amazing that she wanted to shout it as loud as she possibly could for all the world to hear.
Aozaki.
God, he's so innocent it makes me want to barf.
All Aoko could do was sigh. How could she not? Even she was forced to admit that the way he'd snatched her from the jaws of death was dashing.
I must be getting soft.
Truth be told, he was a lunatic for doing what he did. She steadied her breathing and composed herself. While she was in bad shape, she still had her pride as a mage to consider. That was why she felt a need to maintain an air of dignity.
Shizuki, I originally meant to let you off the hook for today only. But I'm willing to let the whole thing go. For the time being, I've decided to let you live.
She hastily extended her right hand. It was either to shake his or to help him up. However, Sojiro did not take her hand, but instead stood up on his own. Sojiro, you dunce! This night. Despite the sheer insanity that he just experienced, his face had not once looked as incredulous as it did now.
What? Something wrong?
She stammered, worried that she had deeply embarrassed herself. Sojiro's gaze was fixed upon Aoko. A problem had dawned on Aoko. Though she normally hated being stared at, this time she did not mind. Rather, she was enjoying the warmth in his eyes and felt like it was something she could almost come to appreciate. Almost?
Right. Don't you get it? This isn't just about friendship. And I didn't mean he only likes you either. Believe me when I say that Sonoji really...
Oh.
The conversation came rushing back. It was a memory better left forgotten.
No, not happening.
Pushing Tobimaru's words out of her mind, Aoko turned to Sojiro.
Don't get any ideas. I don't care about you in the least, Baka.
Puzzled, Sojiro tilted his head.
You already told me how much you dislike me.
He responded matter-of-factly to her sudden declaration. She certainly had pointed that out, and to his face, no less. It had a mere figure of speech that he was not meant to take literally, But now was not the time to belabor the point.
I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying you shouldn't get your hopes up, no matter how far you've fallen for me.
Yet, belabor she did anyway. Aoko blushed slightly, realizing how inane she was being. She wondered how she'd ended up in this position. And yet, she knew that she had to get this off her chest. All that was left was to politely wait for his response.
How much do you guys want to bet that it's going to be something dumb? No, it's Sojiro.
100%.
120%.
I can't date you.
Such heartbreakingly painful words were too much for the simple boy to hear. His shoulders slumped as if the world was coming to an end. Or so Aoko had imagined.
Oh, that's right.
Or
My
was that
fault.
Aoko who said that?
That's definitely Aoko.
Oh, okay. I can't date you.
On the contrary, Sojiro was sitting there in deep thought.
Did you just say, I'm in love with you?
Sojiro murmured the words as if they were a magic spell. She shot right back with the affirmative. After a moment of deep contemplation, the boy turned to the expectant girl and said,
Why do you think that?
"Oh." He had to be joking, but he was not. He was completely serious.
So,
He liked her, but he didn't like her. Of course, the vice president had jumped to conclusions. This boy had no interest in romance. He probably didn't even know what that was.
so,
She was incredibly embarrassed by how confused Shojiro still appeared to be.
for a second I thought the dogs were on the soundtrack of the game.
Until I looked down and I was like, oh, that's balance.
Sorry.
It was just so timely. Like, imagine this happening and then dogs come by and interrupt them. It would have been so perfect.
Just
It's like the cricket equivalent.
It's just like
Yeah.
the Silent Hill dog song from the joke credits.
Oh my god. The joke credits.
Hmm.
Oh my god. Her rosy complexion spread throughout her entire body.
I'll ask again, but why do you think that?
That's what I want to know! You freaking moron, Tobimaru!
Just like that. This shot out of context is perfect.
Man.
She had lost her cool and given in to an unjustifiable outburst.
Boy got knocked the hell out.
Yeah, okay, it kind of looks like one of his teeth went flying. The
Just
shadows
turned into
there.
Love Hina all of a sudden.
Oh my god. Oh my god, all the memories just flew right in. Jesus.
It was time to seal off the area and destroy all evidence. Aoko's embarrassment evolved into sheer panic, and her grudge against Tobimaru suddenly manifested as criminal assault. She lashed out with a punch that could have taken down a bird mid-flight. More specifically, it was a brutal right hook. Aoko blinked. Her blow had connected with something solid, snapping her out of her reverie. Her temper had lashed out at the completely defenseless Sojiro. It had been a splendid blow, with all her weight behind it, knocking him out cold. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Poor boy has been through so much, and this is what knocks him out? Sojiro
I mean, girl just
groaned,
blew up the moon. I guess.
crumpling to the ground. Her punch finished the job that the curse had started. If not for the discomfort on his face, he appeared almost to be sleeping. Alko convinced herself that he was napping, not concussed.
Uh,
Well, whatever. It was always going to end like this anyway.
The tension in her shoulders eased away as she looked down at the Sojiro. A ton had gotten in her way over the course of today, but the day was saved for now. With nobody left to butt heads with, she felt exhaustion finally overtake her.
How the heck am I gonna walk home like this?
I think we've got ourselves a Kanye, I believe.
Uh-huh.
Here
Hi,
we
Mike.
do.
Yes, hello, party people.
Hello.
What's up, Kanye?
My sir, hello.
Nothing much.
Her fatigue was enough to make her complain out loud. When she thought about it, she realized that this was the first time she had used up all of her magical energy, and the first time she had participated in a battle of this scale without any prior preparation.
That's an interesting qualification to make.
I know. It's like, oh, I didn't prepare for this one. Though, in truth,
It would have ended in mutual destruction if I'd been alone.
she felt somewhat proud as she whispered those words. Normally, it was something that she would beat herself up over, but instead, she simply shrugged her shoulders with a bitter smile. It was actually pretty hard to say. After all, it was thanks to the person sleeping by her side.
That you knocked out with a hook?
The right hook, a wicked one at that.
Hey, you can't hear me, can you?
As if the night had swallowed her voice before it reached him, she received no response. Boy is knocked out. Confident, she continued in an even quieter voice.
So, thank you. You really got me out of a jam there.
Of course, there was no response from Sojiro, and she was not expecting one. Saying it for the record was enough. Alko watched Sojiro sleep for a while and then pulled something out of her pocket. Shouldn't she be getting him to a hospital because concussion? It was the palm-sized glass bottle her roommate had given her, which she opened with a pop.
But none of this matters.
Leaving behind words colder than a winter chill at night, she called out his name. She barely sensed the bottle moving. As the silhouette of the fallen boy appeared to blur, she got the feeling that the weight of the bottle had increased slightly.
Whoa, that's kind of weird.
What appeared to be a human form could clearly be seen inside the glass. Alice Kuonji's tools were mystics that confounded even the most knowledgeable of mages. As soon as Alko tried to analyze them with logic or reason, she was already out of her depth. Knowing this all too well, Alko closed the bottle and watched the boy disappear as if by some magic trick.
Jeez, this is no stage trick. It's actual magic.
She muttered as she looked into the magical bottle. Its weight had not changed significantly, and she had no idea how it worked. But the one thing she did know was that there was a human being inside of it. Oof, my cold reading skills are not doing me so great today.
My intrusive thought, if I was in her position, would be like, so what if I shook this bottle really hard?
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Like, should I be really careful how much I move this bottle right now?
I mean, he's already maybe concussed. It's hard to say how much worse it could get.
Well, at that size, if you shake the bottle really hard, it won't be just concussed. It'll look like tomato paste after that.
Ew.
Yeah, best not to shake it. But
Best
what
not to
if?
think too deeply about it. It's just magic, right?
Ha 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 ha.
Ha ha ha. Its light weight was almost unnerving. Closer to empty air than a human being. It was about as heavy as one would expect if they'd bottled a summer breeze. Maybe it's like a
I
Pokeball.
wasn't gonna say it because I'm like the Pokemon nerd here, but I was thinking that it's like a Pokeball.
Though that did fit her image of Sojiro perfectly. Also, what would Sojiro's Pokemon noise be? Huh?
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
It's
It's
Oh.
just like Alice said.
She muttered to no one in particular as she recalled the past.
This really isn't like me.
Alka wore a bittersweet smile. Her usual moodiness was gone. It was a dangerous world out there. It was good to have someone to keep her on her toes. With a wry chuckle, she flicked the magic bottle with her finger and set off walking.
Don't do that. I'll go.
Oh, what did we just say? What did we just say?
And then Sojiro died. Roll credits.
Rip.
Oh no, Rip. She could hear a bell in the distance, signaling the end of the play. An ephemeral dream gave way to reality. In the grand scheme of things, it had been but an instant. As the actors exited stage left, the last of the lights silently flickered out. And so, the long-dead amusement park played its final role as a memory for a boy and a girl.
Like a dog. What a thing to follow up
gosh.
with that.
Yeah, what a follow-up. But also, what happened to Alice?
So
Yeah, where did Alice go?
I'm going to show you guys something on stream. So
Oh.
you'll probably need to turn on the volume in a bit. But I don't know how many of you. Well, I know Kanye knows, but there is going to be a Mahoyo movie
Mm?
soon.
That's
And
exciting.
One of the
Have a
trailers
watch
that
party.
one of the trailers that came out like 4 months ago kind of highlights just the part we just finished. So I'm going to show
Oh.
that off
Yeah.
right here.
Whoa.
It's so good. It's by UFO Table, which of course they're doing everything Type Moon. But this is going to be great. Is that not amazing animation or what? Like holy cow.
It's so
That
good.
looked amazing.
Yeah.
I just like the fact that they just used the same like song
Yeah.
from the VN.
Yeah.
Like of
That
course,
is
like you
Beautiful.
have all the assets ready for you. You may as well use the music.
I was gonna say, like, the fact that the game doesn't even look that much worse than the actual anime.
Yeah.
It really doesn't. It
Yeah.
looks like they just had to fill in some animation frames. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't look like they really had to do too much, I guess. Although, I'm sure they, like, had to actually do a bunch of the animating.
Of course.
I'm
But
surprised they hadn't made an adaptation sooner if the game is that old.
Also, is it ufotable or is it UFO table?
I've heard people say both. And I just
Really?
do.
I say ufotable.
Is there a
Yeah.
katakana for it?
Yeah, if there's a katakana for it, I could find out, but I've never seen it.
Let's see, UFO table. And let's just go to Wikipedia. Wikipedia usually has like the katakana. Yeah, they say UFO table.
That's so funny.
makes
UFO
sense, I
table.
All right, I'm going to be right back. I just need to grab my water because I realized I don't have it with me. So I'll be
I
right.
also need to BRB.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, let me just do this,
I will have some water then.
All right. Kobo. What is Kobo?
Kobo?
Oh, it's like an e-reader.
Oh.
It's like a Canadian e-reader. They sell through like Chapters Indigo.
I have been kind of thinking about getting an e-reader of some sort because I don't read enough books, honestly.
Same. I used to read so much when I was younger, and now like, what is a book?
Yeah. I have several books in my bedroom. And the idea was that like I'd read a little bit before I go to sleep, which hasn't happened.
I mean, technically we're reading a book right now, but it's not the same.
Oh, definitely not the same. Also, I may randomly be silent because my sister came back from somewhere a little while ago and just dropped tacos on my lap. So I'm not going to let this cool off and eat it when it's cold. So I will rely on you guys to read some more, which has been primarily my focus anyway. But I think moving forward, we will have Eryn do the narration. We'll have Nancy do Uncle. And can you guess who you're going to be, Kanye?
Man, I had no idea, guys.
Yeah, it's Alice. I'm glad
I'll
you
be
figured that out.
Tim is so smart.
Yeah, I'm not joking. You'll be voicing Alice and Sojiro though.
Okay. Alright.
You thought I was joking? Okay. And I think we're just waiting on Nancy, I believe, right? Yeah. So we will start as soon as she comes back. I sort of babysit a kid and he likes the Geronimo Stilton books. What are those? I feel dumb for... Or not even dumb. I feel
Out of the
uncultured.
loop.
I feel out of touch with children's things.
Oh, I recognize
Oh.
this character design. I didn't know that was his name.
Yeah, as soon as I saw the art, I was like, oh wait, I actually know this. It's old? Well, just because you think I'm old doesn't mean I happen to know all of these things from years back off. Good lord.
Especially if it's Italian.
Is it Italian?
That's what the Google
Oh, it
search
is.
says.
Yeah,
Anyway.
an Italian children's chapter book. So they were definitely very popular because they were always in like all of those scholastic catalogs that all the elementary schools would always try to pawn off of you. Like, yeah, convince your parents to buy you all these books. And they never do. Except one time after you beg enough. Okay. So we'll go ahead and get started. Nancy, I don't know if you reheard the plan, but Aaron's going to be doing the narrating. You'll be Aoko.
Okay,
Um,
sounds good.
And Kanye is going to be Alice and Sojiro.
Nice.
All right. And I eat tacos. Let's go.
I eat tacos.
I'm not joking. I got tacos, man. I'm eating them before they go cold.
He was still in a deep sleep.
That's not good.
It all seemed ablaze in a mad, fiery red. Unbearable idle thoughts. Incessant obstinacy. Melancholy sights and gloomy, bittersweet talk. Fickle wickedness born of human interaction. Namely, the voice of a forsaken coexistence. This, however, was the scenery of a world far removed from that. If there were those praying this was paradise, then there were likely also those lamenting it as the underworld. In a decade, or perhaps longer, this would all change. But for now, the autumn leaves remained yet untrampled by human souls. It was scenery he knew well. Life in the mountains was humble and modest. There were no conspicuous buildings among this wilderness he called home. They gathered and stockpiled only what they needed to survive without pillaging the land. Serpentine trails could be woven through the fields, and the stone steps leading to the summit were obscured by the forest, only visible once upon them. The mountain inhabitants probably intended it that way. There was no sign of mankind's exploitation among the mountain landscape. He suddenly remembered that this was the season he liked the most. Or rather, it suited him the most. There was much to be done to prepare for winter, but whenever he had a free moment, he would make his way toward the mountaintop. Gazing idly at the setting sun while breathing deep the crisp autumn air was probably the second favorite of his daily joys. It relaxed him, the cold but comforting wind at dusk, and the way the sunset dyed the peaks a vibrant crimson. Not 2 months had passed since coming down from the mountains, and already it pained him that the memories had begun to fade. Someone once told him that memories fade every day, so the best you want do... What?
Yeah.
I think what
That's
they
weird.
mean is the best one can do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or the best you can do.
Yeah.
Okay, just another one of those that could have used another pass. The entire game could have used in another pass.
Mm-hmm. So the best one can do is make as many new ones as possible. Recollections grew hazy. A new place to live meant the beginning of a new life. He wasn't sure if he was reluctant to let go of the scenery he'd cherished for so long, or if he'd merely been spoiled by it. Despite his new home in a city surrounded by tall buildings, he felt guilty for wanting those memories alone to remain clear in his mind. Either way, he had to make the best of a fresh start.
Psst.
Oh, should this be Kanye?
I
Yes.
think so.
Alright. What kind of man thinks more about where he came from than where he's going?
He contemplated.
Oh. This is a dream.
He tried to stop himself from indulging in uncharacteristic sentimentality. It wouldn't be a dream if it was easy to understand. The moment he realized he was dreaming, angular shadows began to rise from the autumn colors. They were concrete buildings, previously unknown and yet familiar to him at the same time. This was how his current life was washing away his memories. Struggle as he might, there was no stopping the degradation of human memory or impressions. It was merely a fact of life. By nature, humans lived in the present over the past. Eventually, even his most cherished memories would be swallowed up by the buildings. It was neither cruel nor heartless. If they were sure to disappear, then for now he would content himself with dreaming about the memories he could clearly recall. Whether in the mountains or the city, the days flew by. Yesterday's scenery was not the same as today's. And such. She had given him no time to grieve. Distant nostalgia was beautiful, but that made it fleeting.
Miyagi Nudo?
Miyagi Nudo?
You're no Miyagi Nudo.
I think this is
Okay.
actually Alice.
Oh.
Okay. Miyagi Nudo. Okay. You're no Miyagi Nudo, Aozaki. I can't talk my way past you.
A faint dizziness made him close his eyes. Without sight, the mountainous landscape vanished, but in its place, a familiar voice could be heard. It was a booming voice that seemed to shake not only the mountainside he stood upon, but the entire mountain as well. And of course, Aoko Aozaki reappeared, towering in the distance. He must have been tired, he thought, diagnosing himself while trying to make out what she was saying. Fearing the vertigo would return if he reopened his eyes, he decided to keep them closed. It sounded like she was arguing with someone, though the tone was all he could make out. It wasn't violent, but certainly aggressive. Maybe she was picking a fight with another mountain across the way. He wouldn't put it past her. After all, she was a troublemaker who blew up the moon. He couldn't quite grasp the conversation. Though somehow, vaguely, he had the sense that his human rights were being largely ignored. It was deeply unsettling, even for a dream. After several minutes, it seemed that the high-impact argument ended in Aoko's victory. Then suddenly, the boisterous voice faded. Praying everything would be back to normal, he opened his eyes. He took a deep, slow breath. The scenery was a far cry from the nostalgic dreamscape he had just left, albeit not unpleasant either. Without a doubt, it was the amusement park. To him, this was his freshest memory. He recalled the House of Mirrors that Aoko Aozaki destroyed. This park was a flawless replica of reality, but he was the only one there. Without having to worry about anyone chasing him, he sat down on the wreckage of Kitsy's rides and looked up at the moon that should have been shot down. The winter moon shone white like a jewel. It was layered over the figure of a girl who'd tried to kill him. If a mage was a witch, then she definitely fit the bill.
I think this is Sojiro.
I don't mind being killed.
Such an absurd thing to say, but it spilled out of him so naturally.
Well, maybe.
That had nothing to do with witches or magecraft. There was an echo in the gaps of his heart. If she had not spoken those words, then he would not have responded as he did. In that moment, what had Aoko Aozaki said to him? As he tried to remember, his deep slumber drew to an end. And with it, his chance to find the answers he so wished he could find. Then, Sojiro woke up in an unfamiliar room, gasping. Not because the plush mattress he was on was softer than his apartment's cheap futon, or because everything from the carpet to the wallpaper looked expensive. Bewildered, he tried to catch his breath. She was the cause of his surprise. The moment Sojiro's eyes snapped open, there she was, the girl dressed in black, sitting at his bedside.
Just so that it's not Kanye talking to himself, I'll have you voice Alice if you could, Nancy.
Sure. Do we want to keep with the English accent?
If that's comfortable with you. I think Eryn tried it when you were gone, and then Eryn was like, I can't keep this up.
Yeah, I need to
Points for
prepare if I'm going to do a British accent.
Points for effort, though.
Mm-hmm.
It kept coming out as Cockney, and I was like, nope, that's not Alice.
That's fair.
The silence was deafening. Still supine on the bed, Sojiro gazed at her. His impulse was to sit up, but he refrained, thinking it might be rude to be staring at the person sitting next to him. Geez, did someone really skimp on this chapter?
Yeah,
Yeah.
this chapter needed a bit of love.
She was just sitting there on a chair, dressed in black, modest clothes. Still, she projected an air that was anything but plain. Her monochrome outfit evoked indescribable elegance. Like a costume handmade just for her from the finest fabrics. It was enough to inspire poetic sentiments, even in Sojiro. The girl continued to sit, completely motionless. Without realizing it, Sojiro had stopped breathing. Genuine astonishment had him captivated. Such beauty. It was the first time he had ever thought to use such a simple, plain expression to describe another human being. She was the daffodil in perfect bloom, or the ideal female form seen only in dreams.
Only an anime.
Only an anime.
This quality was something to be cherished and admired in her. It was different from Aoko Aozaki's blindingly radiant vitality. After all, the flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long. And there was no way this girl would be allowed such a happy ending. Her life was a solitary fable of someone who left the world in exactly the same way they entered it. With her humanity stolen at birth, hers was an existence not of this world. The more beautiful something was, the more tragic its fate. Growing up in the mountains, this was not something Sojiro was taught, but something he learned from experience.
It looks like she's sleeping.
Sojiro turned his head, as though he were being lured in. He knew it was rude to stare, but he couldn't fight his instincts. Then This time his heart actually skipped a beat. She was not asleep at all. Expressionless, she was merely watching over him while he recovered. Sojiro froze, unable to turn his head away or think of something clever to say. It was like staring into her eyes turned him to stone. Perhaps because of her delicate features, she looked somewhat younger than him. On the other hand, her tranquil expression made him feel like she was older. Jet black hair just to her shoulders. Her large eyes were set like onyx stones, matching her hair. Devoid of emotion, her gaze stayed fixed on Sojiro. Even after their eyes met, she did not turn away.
Staring contest.
He wanted to speak, but could not find the words. It was not unlike a frog being stared down by a snake. Nevertheless, he just could not bring himself to say something. Additionally, no matter how carefree Sojiro might have been, he was painfully aware that this girl was as powerful as Alko. Less talkative, to be sure, but still powerful. Objectively, the scene was not unlike that of someone nursing a bedridden stranger. He had no idea what she may have been thinking about, but it seemed to him this harsh silence might last forever. All he could say for sure was that the quiet did not appear to bother her in the slightest. It was like some bizarre form of punishment.
If this is some kind of test from Aozaki, it sure is elaborate.
He thought, keeping his eyes on the girl. He felt like the moment he turned his head or blinked, she might stab him in the chest with a hidden blade. And not because his imagination was running away with him. In the stifling silence, it was only natural that Sojiro would think back on what had happened in the amusement park, and it made him uneasy. But stronger than any anxiety was his fascination with the girl.
God, they keep going back to this. I forgot how long this lasted.
Her slender frame and milky white skin. The chill of her guarded stare, the warmth of her lingering femininity. The boobliness of her boobly man writing woman. I was writing.
I was thinking it!
Oh my god.
The chinny chin chinness of her chin.
It was the mixture of those latter two qualities that were almost magical, especially the boobliness.
I was just saying, like, that right after what you just said.
Excuse me, I need a sec. Okay. Calm. He stared at her for so long, he began to get the feeling that they had met somewhere before. Sorry, it crept up on me. Sometime before the conflict at Kitsyland. He could not... Oh no! Oh no, I've been infected by the giggles.
It's just worse that any of these lines could just be complete horrible innuendos.
Uh-huh.
God. Nancy.
Sorry, it's a trope and a meme.
Oh.
Okay. He could not quite put his finger on it, but he was sure he had seen her previously.
I don't know if this is the right time to ask this, but
His voice shattered the frozen silence in the room. He almost felt sorry for making noise as he spoke out to her. But they could not very well just sit and stare at each other forever. Though he might have been the only one thinking they were staring, and perhaps she thought they were glaring at each other.
where am I? And who might you be?
She narrowed her eyes slightly, though apparently not out of offense. There was no response. Just as he was thinking it would have been better to keep quiet, she quietly raised her hand.
This is yours, is it not?
Her voice was cold, but melodic. A white piece of cloth was wrapped in her fingers. There was no need to tell him what it was. He was conscious enough to recognize his own possessions. Sojiro sat speechless as she tossed it to him. Picking it up, he wrapped it around his neck.
Does Aoko know about that?
He looked away in response to her blunt question, distracted by something unrelated. She called Aoko Aozaki by her given name, which led him to believe that the mountain Aoko had argued with in his dream was actually the girl standing beside him, sitting beside him. Not even anything beside him. That word doesn't exist in the sentence.
I'm not sure.
As sincerely as he could, he answered without presumption. There are things that should be known, and things that need not be. There are also things that should be told, and other things that must not be. Sojiro was not exactly sure what that she was referring to. However,
But maybe it's better that way.
he smiled slightly at her question. Perhaps impressed by his response, the overwhelming pressure in the room dissipated noticeably. Or maybe she had been more nervous than he was the entire time. I doubt that, but we'll see. Projecting the image that his room was her domain a tad too strongly. The tension faded. Sojiro tried to sit up and prop his arms beneath him. Now that they were talking, it seemed awkward to stay lying down. However, his body felt strange as he tried to move, and it surprised him how difficult it was to sit up. It took everything he had just to raise his upper body to a sitting position.
Huh? I'm still in my clothes.
As he threw the covers back, he tilted his head quizzically.
How did you not realize that as you were wrapping the bandage around your neck?
I'm sorry. This is such a nice bed, too. I shouldn't be in my clothes under the sheets. What a waste of a good bed.
She stared at him, not expecting him to complain about not wearing pajamas while sleeping. Somehow it appeared he had done something to surprise her.
But why? I didn't do anything.
Pouting a bit at the unwarranted curiosity, he turned to face her. Although he was still mostly laying down, it was at least a more dignified position.
So, any chance you'll tell me?
Indeed, he needed to find out where he was and who she was before anything else. Actually, the more he thought about what happened at the amusement park, the more he got a sinking feeling in his stomach.
Oh, she looks pissed.
Perhaps finally getting through to her, she calmly moved her arm from behind her back when
Mm.
Hmm.
once again they silently locked eyes. Thump, thump, thump. There was a startling sound of rapidly approaching footsteps.
I'll have you voice Alco as well, Nancy.
Okay, I'll try.
They both had a pretty good idea of who it was.
Alice, you promised!
Just as expected. Aoko Aozaki burst through the door with a thunderous roar. She entered wearing her school uniform, her long hair flowing behind her.
Let's actually change it up a little bit. Kanye, if you could do the narrating this time.
Okay.
We'll have Eryn read Alice's lines then.
Alright, she's going to suddenly turn not British. I hope that's okay.
Or Cockney.
Her breathing was heavy and her forehead was wrinkled by a scowl, granting her a demonic appearance.
Alice!
This girl named Alice scowled slightly in response. She may have even let a sigh of disappointment slip out.
Aoko? Home early, I see.
Her calm voice was the polar opposite of Alco's. Needless to say, her voice dripped with a brazen coldness. Brazen.
That's because I know you all too well. Over the past 2 years, I've come to expect how quickly you jump to conclusions. You might act mild-mannered, but as soon as things don't go your way, the veil drops.
Oh dear, you make it sound so scandalous.
Effortlessly.
So much innuendo!
Yeah. She brushed aside Alco's jab.
Boobily.
Awesome. In doing so, Soju had the distinct impression that she no longer even realized he was in the room.
Ha! Let the record show that I've lost count of how many times you've gone back on your word. I'm tired of hearing the same old story after the fact. I know I said I would leave it to you, but after careful consideration, I decided to take care of it myself. I may have come to terms with your short fuse, but the least you can do is But the least you can do in return is to trust your partner to set things right, no?
You're right. We wouldn't be partners otherwise. Though, you're hardly one to talk after unilaterally deciding our plan from here on out.
We've been over this already. We won, okay? Besides, who was the one who said we should let him live if he escaped? Yet again, you've gone back on your word, Alice. Oh, don't tell me. Next, you'll be saying that's the reason you can't let sleeping dogs lie.
Alice frowned slightly and fell silent. Her housemate seemed to have struck a nerve that Alice herself did not know was there.
Anyway, we agreed to decide what to do with him when he wakes up after hearing him out, right? So stop trying to flip the script every time my back's turned.
Speaking of which, aren't you supposed to be at school? It's noon already.
I remembered you only had your school's end-of-term ceremony today, so I told them I had to leave early for personal reasons. This is so warped. I have finals coming up, for goodness sake!
Alco grumbled more to herself than anyone else in the room. Then she locked eyes with Alice. Or more accurately, they glared daggers at each other. The room became tense once again, and it felt like a fight could break out at any moment, With no way to escape, Sojiro had no choice but to sit and watch. But then, the electric silence that seemed like it would last forever suddenly broke about a minute later. Apparently, this sort of clash was an everyday occurrence.
I'll be in the drawing room. Explain the circumstances to him.
Alice stood up from the chair and made for the door. Watching her go, Sojiro cocked his head. In her hand was what could only be described as...
Alright, I'll do this.
Okay.
A fruit knife?
He had no other words to describe the tool she was clutching.
Alice, I hate to ask, but what's in your hand?
Alco asked Alice as she walked past.
A dagger. What else?
Alice answered expressionlessly before briskly walking out of the room. Sojiro thought it best not to think too deeply about the scene he had just witnessed.
Don't blame him! Holy cow!
The line about her stabbing him at any moment was not a lie.
No, apparently that
No,
was
surely
real.
just waiting to protect him from any bad things that might enter the room. Yeah, definitely.
Surely.
Sure.
Yeah, like a snark from the park at the park.
Uh-huh. Oh, you're lucky I didn't say that there was no more snark in the park in the dark.
At any rate, the girl in black had withdrawn, and along with her, the feeling of tension. Leaving a bedridden Sojiro alone with an Alco still dressed for school.
I'll have Eryn voice Sojiro now.
Okay.
Yay.
From Sojiro's perspective, this was a perfect chance to get answers to his ever-growing list of questions.
My head's spinning, Ozaki.
I bet. I'll explain everything in order, so just shut up and listen.
Okay.
Okay. I see the facial paralysis is gone and your breathing has stabilized. It looks like you're through the worst of it.
She nodded, satisfied, as she took a seat.
How do you feel?
A bit sluggish.
He answered meekly, dropping his shoulders. He opened and closed his left hand a few times, but moving his fingers felt slow and awkward. It was clear he was still in bad shape. Meanwhile, Alka was blinking her eyes in wonder. Or was it admiration? Between Alice and Alko, Sojiro did not know which of the girls was the harder to read.
Well, you're bound to feel a bit sluggish. Lying in bed for 2 days straight would make anyone feel weak. But I never thought you'd be well enough to speak. You're a lot tougher than you look.
2 days?
It's been 2 days. Don't worry about the school. I submitted a notice of absence. In the meantime, Alice and I dispelled the Grander curse and Dempty poem.
Sojiro nodded at the word curse, as if recalling it suddenly. It was all coming back to him now.
What's wrong? You look troubled by something.
I just forgot everything that really happened is all. Was I really asleep for 2 days? Getting cursed is pretty scary.
You're as cool as a cucumber, aren't you? It's as if 2 days on death's door hasn't changed you a bit. Do you realize you were one step away from becoming a vegetable for the rest of your life?
No thanks to Aoko.
Oh my god!
Literally.
He didn't need that punch, holy shoot!
For real though.
Also, I will BRB for a good bit.
Okay.
Okay,
I'll take over the narration then.
thanks.
Alright, you guys have fun.
Thanks.
I'll be back soon.
Bye! Take
Bye.
care.
Wait, just a second. Was it really that bad?
It was, and I guess you're proof that ignorance is bliss after all.
Oops, oops, oops. There we go.
Anyway, what's done is done. Be sure to thank Alice later. I couldn't have lifted the curses without her help.
Sometimes bliss is overrated. Oh, and yeah, you said the name Alice. Was that girl Alice? Was she the one who, tried to kill us at the amusement park?
Alko replied that it was.
She was sitting by my side for ages. Is this her room or something?
Sojiro scanned the room again. He was not accustomed to sleeping on anything other than a futon, and the room looked especially foreign to him.
No, this is just a guest room. It hasn't been used in forever. Hence the dust over everything. More importantly, what did you and Alice talk about?
Well, we didn't really talk so much as...
He brought his hand to his mouth and recalled the few words they exchanged. As Sojiro said, calling it a conversation would be a gross overstatement. And yet, thinking back on it, it seemed like they had talked for hours, which brought an uncomfortable smile to its gross face.
But it's fine. I'm no longer worried. Although it would have been nice if you'd come a little later, Aozaki.
Excuse?
Aoko narrowed her eyes at this innocent slip of the tongue. She knew Sojiro did not mean to treat her like a nuisance, but nevertheless, she found it hard to take the full brunt of the words said to her face. Even worse, she sensed she was getting used to his manner of speaking.
So that's why she... You really do have a knack for surviving by the skin of your teeth, don't you?
He tilted his head, clearly confused.
I'm saying you did something to please Alice. That's the reason you're still alive.
Hmm?
Eh?
No
Sojiro?
matter no matter how hard he tried, he could not grasp at what she was getting at. He decided to change the subject to something else.
By the way, where are we exactly? I asked the other girl, but she wouldn't tell me. You can tell me, right, Aozaki?
You're inside Misaki's infamous haunted house, but you can call it the Kuonji estate. And that girl, that's Alice Kuonji. This is her mansion, which happens to be the place I currently call home. After the other night, I, brought you here. You don't remember, do you?
Something about the way she said that made him feel uncomfortable.
Kuonji. I've heard that name before. Hey, I know. Some guys in the shopping district were talking about it. The Kuonjis are a rich and famous family or something.
Don't you dare say that in front of Alice. If you want to live here in peace, that is.
Huh?
Confused yet again, Sojiro tilted his head for what seemed like the 100th time that day.
Huh?
And
Metal Gear.
once again, he had heard something to make him feel uneasy.
Aozaki? Did you just say...
Shizuki, I have very little patience for liars, idiots, and people that make me repeat myself. Do your best to remember that if you want to enjoy your stay here.
With her best smile, Aoko made her threatening proclamation. Needless to say, it caught Sojiro completely off guard.
I must have misheard you because I could have sworn you said something about me living here?
He shot her an honest stare of disapproval. It was the best resistance he could muster. But it was not in the slightest effective against Aoko's overpowering, ruthless glare.
The quicker you understand the position you're in, the better it'll be for you.
You mean...
He considered her words carefully. He wanted to openly express his feelings on the matter, but instead, he swallowed his words and shook his head. Despite his typical inability to read people's emotions, he at least seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. It appeared that he had finally realized that it was his carefree mood that typically got on Aoko's nerves.
My mistake. I forgot there's no use beating around the bush with you. Fine. I wanted to give you time to think, but we're way past that, so I'll just come right out and say it. Listen to me, Shizuki. As of now, you are being placed under our supervision. You will be living here together with us for the time being. Naturally, I reserve the right to decide whether you live or die, of course.
And this is every anime redditor's dream come true.
Yep, this is a harem story isekai. I don't know, what is this?
Yeah, as he was like sitting there staring at Alice, all I could think was, I'm surprised this is not a visual novel with choices, because this feels like the place where you would get the option to build up points with Alice.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Or get stabbed.
Or get stabbed, or, you know,
That
have
end.
Bad
multiple euphemisms for
Oh.
boobily noticing boobs.
That camera angle was on her chest for a long time.
Suspiciously. And yet,
I mean, it's
Milky
still pretty tasteful by the standards of dating style visual novels.
True.
But
Very
still.
fair. Very
Very
fair.
true. And yet, Milky skin was only mentioned once.
And onyx eyes.
Yes. And her chin-length hair. What else did they say about her? Gosh.
Yeah, honestly, a lot of the descriptions were tame. The only thing that was possibly slightly uncomfortable was the milky skin.
Yeah.
So,
What?
kudos to them.
Yeah. What?
The blatant tyranny in her voice caused him to sputter. He wished that she would stop smiling in an attempt to make it seem any less outrageous.
Live together? With you?
It was not the faint expectation of living under the same roof with Aoko that had him flustered. Rather, he was genuinely concerned about his own safety. Regardless of how good-natured he was, it seemed he'd finally come to grips with the fact that he just escaped death.
You can't be serious. That's like seeking warmth next to a bear before it goes into hibernation.
Aoko agreed, as blunt a comparison as it was.
Once in a while you have some pretty accurate metaphors, you know. But I'm glad you figured it out. Make a wrong move or break a rule and I'll end you. For real this time. God, that expression.
I always love it when it comes up.
Plus, it's just me and Alice you'll be living with. She has way less common sense than I do. So if you're not careful, you'll wind up dead by her hands too.
Aoko was 100% serious. I can't take this serious. It was her sincerity that made it all the more believable.
No.
Obviously, there was no way the victim, Sojiro, could accept these terms.
Wait a minute, you're not making any sense, Aozaki. You say I'm under your supervision, but why is that necessary? If you think about it, I haven't even done anything wrong, so there's really no point in keeping an eye on me. This has to be a misunderstanding. Is it... Are all mages like you, Aozaki?
Arrogant and selfish, were the words that the harmless boy's gaze seemed to imply. Aoko felt a headache coming on. Due to his innate easygoing persona, Sojiro had not thought to question that Aoko being a mage was out of the ordinary.
That's the problem! We need to keep an eye on you so you don't go around saying things like that and blow our cover, you dunce!
Aoko flew out of her chair. She had been doing her best to keep her cool, but it seemed her well of patience had finally run dry. Witnessing Aoko snap, Sojiro clapped his hands together.
Oh, now I get it. The reason you tried to kill me was because you have to hide the fact that you're a mage. Ah, naruhodo.
Ah, naruhodo, naruhodo. So
Okay,
desu ka,
if
so
that's the case, then I get it. Yeah, so desho. You're monitoring me to protect your secret, and not taking my life is your way of throwing me a bone.
It took him almost
this
dying
long.
and 2 days to get to
job,
this
Sojiro.
conclusion.
How many murder attempts on him? I mean, those aren't the words I would use, but sure. It sounds a bit harsh when you put it that way.
But isn't this all a little unrealistic? I have school and work to go to. I can't stay locked up inside this house all day.
In an instant, Sojiro's objectivity had her stumped, leaving her at a loss for words. He honestly had no idea what position he was in. To believe that he had any sort of freedom at this point was shocking, to say the least.
Just breathe, Oko. If anything, this will speed things along.
Aoko somehow managed to compose herself. As a matter of fact, she had never any intention of imprisoning him. Stripping him of his freedom and incarcerating him would go against their agreement anyway. Besides, if she was going to go that far, it would be easier to just kill him. To
Yeah, plus we
Aoko-
don't have to feed him.
exactly. To Aoko, letting him live meant showing a modicum of respect to Sojiro's way of life.
You're not saying... Oh, wait, don't tell me I can't even leave this room!
A light bulb went on in his head as he blurted out what he was thinking. It appeared he'd finally got the grim message. Aoko looked somewhat satisfied at his dismay.
Relax. Locking you up would actually be more trouble than it's worth. Your freedom was taken into consideration. To what degree you're free will be left to the discretion of Alice and her abilities, so you won't have to worry about that.
A gloomy look fell over Sojiro's face as he found his concern growing by the second.
Alright, look. Sparing your life is based on the premise that you will live in this house under supervision, and that's only until a more permanent solution is found. It's a lot more amicable than just disposing of the witness, don't you think? At any rate, this is my way of keeping our promise, so no complaining. This Cold War I'm waging with Alice is enough of a headache already.
She sighed as she stared Sojiro down as he lay on the bed.
But make no mistake. Your status here is the lowest of the low, even lower than a dog's. Since that night, I'm the one to decide whether you live or die, which means you belong to me now.
Every anime redditor screaming,
I
"That
was
should be
gonna-
me!"
Every single one screaming, either internally or very loudly, I don't know.
Typing it all in caps, "That should be me!"
It should have been me! Is that clear enough for you?
As Aoko finished her declaration, Sojiro subtly looked up at the ceiling so she would not notice his reaction. He meant no offense to Aoko, but he had to hide the fact that he fundamentally disagreed with her analogy. In Sojiro's opinion, it was disrespectful to both dogs and humans to call him lower than a dog. A more accurate analogy of their power dynamic would be that of a rabbit and a wild boar, hence why he chose not to voice this opinion.
He's getting smarter.
It's probably because that's the only comparison he could make. Unlike his apartment, the ceiling here was decorated with ornate patterns. I'm realizing that my ceiling has no patterns either.
My ceiling's very plain.
So is mine. Putting aside how he would be treated here, in terms of lodging, it was a definite upgrade.
Hey, plus sides.
Maybe it would not be all that bad. Sojiro nodded slowly, as if to persuade himself. And...
For the time being, I've decided to let you live.
that is what she had told him, not 2 days ago.
While I don't really accept what you're saying, I understand my position. I remember what you promised me now. There are lots of things I could disagree with, but I admit you did promise me that, at least. Are you really serious about me living with the two of you? I know you're pretty easygoing, but that girl seems pretty against it, and I'm not exactly...
At that point, he zipped his lips. Aoko's eyes were tinged with bloodlust.
Oh, please excuse me. I'm sorry to hear that you're dissatisfied with the arrangement.
Her contrived smile, so obviously forced, struck despair into Sojiro's heart. Come to think of it, he vaguely recalled her warning to him to not make her repeat herself. Furthermore, as a practical matter, Sojiro Shizuku's life was now in the hands of Aoko Aozaki. It would be unwise to anger her further, he told himself, as if speaking to a third person.
Not at all. I mean, what choice do I have anyway?
None.
Aoko said with a firm nod of her head. Sojiro slumped his shoulders in surrender.
Alright. I understand you now, Aozaki. Just let me ask you this one thing. Do I have any human rights?
Poor little Shizuki. You never had any in the first place. Now stop wasting my time with stupid questions.
I love Aoko. Oh, you delivered that so well. Oh my god. Sojiro reflected upon her answer, now feeling like his question was, indeed, stupid. He should have already known the answer before he asked.
That's what I thought. I had a feeling this was going to happen even before waking up.
His muttering provoked a dubious stare from Aoko before she quickly retracted it. If she questioned every little thing he said, they would be there until sundown.
Well, as long as you understand. Now, we need to get down to brass tacks. Let's move to the drawing room. I have a ton of explaining to do. Can you stand on your own?
I was able to move my hands earlier, so blood is at least flowing. I should be able to walk.
Good. You'll be fine then.
With that, she turned her back and walked away from him. He had seen this bold form of hers many times before. Instantly, the memories flashed back to him like lightning.
I remember now. This is the Aozaki I know.
Without knowing it, he cracked a smile. He was so lost that he did not know his left from his right, but recalling this alone was enough to calm him. The Aoko he knew was different from the one in the House of Mirrors. She was not that brooding girl he saw there. He felt a pang of nostalgia. The Aoko he knew was brisk in movement and unfaltering in gaze, just like this one. She was the same as when he first met her, moody, yet overflowing with confidence, in her element.
Let's go, chop chop! Alice is waiting for us in the drawing room.
She was already outside the door, standing in the chilly corridor.
You must not know what it's like to be bedridden, Alzaki.
Grunting and groaning, Sojiro eventually got to his feet. His body, heavy and stiff while he was lying down, cried out in pain as he tried to stand and walk. Every step sent shooting pains through his bones. Despite this, he put on a calm face and made his way toward Aoko. Typically, he was quick to not pay any mind to life's little struggles, but these pains, he needed to force himself to consciously ignore them. In other words, he was displaying false bravado, an uncharacteristic reaction for someone who never suppressed their true feelings.
Amazing. You really are tough, huh?
Thanks. It's just my heart that's fragile.
Oh yeah? I'll keep that in mind and try not to hurt your precious feelings.
Naturally, her voice was devoid of any true empathy. She turned away from the once more dejected Sojiro and began to walk briskly down the corridor.
Oh, and...
Just then, she stopped. Feet snapped together as though something had popped into her head. And just as if she was remembering something she had forgotten in a completely trivial way.
Follow me, Sojiro.
She had gallantly turned back the way she was heading, the words sounding so natural as she spoke them. Aoko did not see the look in Sojiro's eyes as he heard her words. For though she worked in the arcane, the spell Aoko had woven was apparent to everyone but her. After blinking his eyes as if blinded by something, Sojiro casually nodded and followed behind her. Alright, let's have Nancy do the narrating.
Okay. The sheer size of the interior was daunting. The 3 floors of this mansion contained more rooms than Sojiro's entire apartment building. Except, their size was excessive. Here, the mansion's rooms seemed too numerous for so few inhabitants, its lavish, carpeted halls cold and dreary. The guest room that Sojiro had been sleeping in was on the 2nd floor of the east wing. A staircase leading down to the 1st floor was at the end of the corridor at the center of the mansion. Winter's sunlight beamed through the windows, which only made the empty corridor appear even lonelier. The center of the mansion was topped by a vaulted skylight overlooking the 1st floor. The staircase connecting the 1st and 2nd floors lined its walls. Another staircase at the other end of the 2nd floor corridor presumably led to an attic or storeroom of sorts on the 3rd floor. Paying no mind to Sojiro's gawking, Aoko descended the stairs with familiar steps. The foyer was a place of white and wood grain. Its hardwood floors shone brightly under the sunlight coming in from the ceiling. And the tall white walls were spotless and brawny.
I remember when I first played the game and I saw the small bits of the mansion. I was all, man, I would love to actually see a mansion like this. Like the way that the staircase is made. That
seriously, the description is like, this house is huge.
Yeah.
Also, imagine having to run from like the first floor to the third floor.
What are your guys' opinions about like living or owning a mansion like this if you ever had the opportunity? Would you do it?
Yes, if it comes with people to help me upkeep the home. Like, I don't think I could keep this whole place spotless
Yeah,
myself.
I would prefer to live there with a group of people so the rooms would actually be used.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I would have people. I would like live in a house like this with friends, like a lot of friends.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
no, we're just describing a YouTuber house.
Except less inhumane conditions.
Uh-huh.
And there would definitely be a whole lot more room to just for everyone to do their own thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, look at that fireplace. That looks gorgeous. I would just
Yeah.
curl up by the fireplace and read a book.
Yeah.
But
I've always
definitely you need help upkeeping it.
for sure. Though for
I
me
think I
even
remember
personally,
hearing something about the reason so many like houses, like old style houses were that big to begin with was because they had so many serving staff.
yeah. I think
100%.
for me it would be the same. But I'd be even okay with just 2 or 3 other people. I've always been the kind of person who I need space. I really, really need space. And
Mhm.
that involves walking around. Like whenever I'm working, there like 2 or even 3 times in an hour, I'll just stand up and just walk downstairs. Even if it's for nothing. Just walking down the stairs, messing around with the dogs or the cat, looking in the pantry, and ultimately getting nothing. And then going back upstairs to
yes.
work.
Uh-huh.
Just that alone is a nice ritual for me. So imagining having more space to do that in a place like this, where I can actually have an actual nice walk around the premise, especially with a beautiful foyer like this with the sun coming in through the windows and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how does that not like just make you feel uplifted if it was kept up properly, right? Without all the dust in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, this fantasy is also coming with the assumption that I have the money to pay for enough
Also
staff
that.
for that.
Mhm.
Also that, because I imagine the property taxes for this place would be monstrous.
Yeah. So that's why I like preface it with like if you had the money to
Yeah.
to live there, which would definitely include like maid services or butler services, whichever. Because
Yeah.
no way in heck, like 3
Paid healthy
YouTubers would be
living
able to do it.
wages, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah. 100%. But I feel like something like this would just be so cool to live in. Like, it's clearly an older home. It's built with a lot of just like attention to detail. Yeah, it'd be really cool. Although the way they describe the corridors as being really drafty makes me like never want to leave the rooms then.
Yeah, like we could even see in here that
Oh,
there's a
God.
radiator right there next to the grandfather
If there
clock.
were YouTubers living here, the acoustics would be horrible.
Yeah.
That's why you specifically choose one room and you just pad it up like hell.
Yeah, maybe. But like, even if we weren't YouTubers, if it was just like, a bunch of friends who
Yeah.
just live together because it's easier to afford a home together.
These days, yeah, especially like
Yeah.
Ah, the millennial dream.
The millennial dream.
I had a friend of mine. We were kind of toying with the idea for a little bit, and she actually started looking around. It's like, what do you think of this place? What do you think of this place? It's like, man, I wish, but there's no way I could even contribute.
Well, given that you make the American freedom dollars, I bet you could buy the $1 million house that's down the street.
No, not at all. It's not enough. For the time being, I'm more than happy to just fantasize about this specific mansion.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
It is beautiful.
It is. I love it.
There was a staircase leading to the second floor and a long unused fireplace. Oh. A neglected telephone sat on a table opposite a solemn grandfather clock. It was more like an old castle than a mansion. Aoko shot Sojiro a callous stare, who stood captivated by the otherworldly scenery.
You go for this, Eryn.
Okay. Hey, snap out of it. The drawing room is this way.
She grabbed the knob of the door next to the stairs. There were 4 doors to the foyer, and the easternmost as you entered the house led to the drawing room. The door on the opposite side of the foyer led to the mansion's west wing. To the south was the entrance. On the north side was one more door next to the fireplace. Tucked underneath the stairs, this door connected to a bathroom unbeknownst to Sojiro.
Yeah, with the mansion being described and shown in such detail, like no wonder the animators had so much reference for it.
Seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Due to the lack of windows, the first floor's corridors were not well lit. If the second floor was a seldom attended infirmary, and the foyer a stairwell in some foreign castle, then the first floor corridor was a windowless labyrinth, not unlike the corridors of a hotel.
Before I lose my train of thought, what you said, Eryn, like, actually kind of reminded me of something else too. Like, because this is actually in a novel-like way, where it's a third person, not a first person kind of story-driven story. The level of detail it gives, also not just for the setting, but even how like the delivery of the lines would be done, right? So like if something like this was in like the other visual novels like Valhalla, can you imagine how much easier it would have been to kind of like follow true to like the author's intentions for the lines delivered? Because there's that all over the place, pretty much. Like the way that they all would mutter to herself or say hastily.
Yeah.
Like the small details that you wouldn't notice from a still image, obviously. Just makes me even more curious to see how the animation is going to be like.
Yeah. Well, it's always an interesting experience translating from one medium to another, and especially one so different from a visual. Well, like, this is still a visual medium, but like the way they describe things is like it's a text-only novel.
Yeah, it is.
And
it's like you're basically reading a
Yeah,
novel.
they really don't like lean on the visuals as an aid. They really don't skimp on the description. To its credit, I think.
yeah, I think that's why I've enjoyed this visual novel so much because of that. It like just like how you were saying, it just feels like reading an actual book, and the visuals are just a really nice bonus.
It's a literal visual novel. Although it had not been long since Sojiro came to the city, even he could feel this place was out of the ordinary. Seeing as how he was going to be stuck here for the foreseeable future, he found it hard to get excited about living in a haunted house.
So that's the drawing room, and a little farther down is the kitchen. It's fine for cooking simple meals. Here next to the drawing room is the sunroom, which we use as a dining room, but we'll get into that later.
Aoko said, reaching for a door along the dim corridor. However, she paused before turning the knob. She flashed Sojiro a meaningful glance, which she quickly withdrew. Then, without further ado, she opened the door.
Sorry for the wait. He's on board.
You know, they've mentioned it before, but that TV is just so out of place.
I enjoy it a lot.
Also, I just noticed the brand name, Sani, instead
Sani.
of
Of course.
Sony.
Oh my gosh. You're right, I couldn't even see it, she said to Alice as she entered the drawing room. After hesitating for a moment, Sojiro entered after her. Compared to the corridor, the drawing room was unexpectedly modern. The carpeted floor, leather sofas, and a large 30-inch television were more what Sojiro had come to expect in a normal home. In this family-oriented room, a girl far removed from said setting sat quietly on the sofa. Aoko sat on the sofa across from the girl in all black. This gave Sojiro 2 seating options. Next to Aoko Aozaki, or next to Alice Kuonji.
This would definitely be the dating sim choice.
Yeah,
I
I
knew
was just
you were
thinking
going
that.
to point that out.
Yeah, I was thinking it. After about 2 seconds of deliberation, he decided to stand by the wall as neither option appealed.
I
Good choice.
I respect that choice. It's exactly
Neutral.
what I've done.
Very neutral. Aoko and Alice were facing each other across the coffee table. The clean, perfectly level table somehow added to the austere atmosphere.
Another side tangent. I'm taking another look at Sojiro's jacket and I'm realizing that fashion, aside from the pants, the jacket in particular, is definitely not time accurate. There's no jacket that I would see with both the upper and bottom zipper.
I feel like that would have been like an Advent Children era type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you look at the material it is, the collar, it's very
Yeah,
reminiscent of
that
like
you mention
Cloud's
it.
Advent Children
Mhm.
outfit.
Like I have a jacket several jackets that has that design, but I never really saw them much aside from like designer clothes or after 2014-ish.
Yeah, and this is supposed to take place in the 90s?
Yeah, right around there.
Yeah, so,
Oh well.
definitely like an early 90s era.
But I try not to nitpick at that too
Don't
much.
think too hard about it.
We are talking about people who can shoot freaking beams.
Yes.
And since he agreed, you shouldn't have any objections, right, Alice?
Alice gave one deep nod in response to her non-question. From his position against the wall, they looked as though they were clearing up some niggling grievance. This song, every time. Sojiro got the feeling that the two did not entirely see eye to eye concerning what to do with him.
Another tangent now that you bring up the song. My first exposure to the song was from an anime that I saw when I was in 6th grade or something like that. I was going through Comcast like on-demand stuff and I saw some free stuff. I had no idea what anime was at the time, and it was Sister Princess that I watched.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Oh,
Speaking
love
of anime that I don't want to come flooding back to my memory.
I
Yeah.
love that you specifically mentioned when you were like looking for the free stuff, because that's exactly what I did too. It was like, hey, I'm poor. I'm poor. I can't afford like on-demand television. I'm just gonna go see what's free.
Yep. Yeah, and I didn't know any better. And now that I know it's a harem anime, and especially that like they're supposed to be sisters, it's like I think about it and I'm like, oh god. But
It's okay. We all have our we wish we hadn't watched it, but we have.
Yeah.
Yep.
but it did introduce me to this piano piece, Gymnopedie number 1 by Sati.
I'm
Yeah.
sure I must have heard it at some point
This
in
is
the
in
past, but I
so
think the first
many
time I
things.
knew it as a thing was when I myself used it in a video essay. I found it in YouTube's audio library.
Amazing.
And then I noticed other people used it in their videos, and I was like, "Huh, I wonder if that's a popular song."
Yep, it sure is.
Next up, Claire de Lune.
Yeah, Claire
Well,
de
Claire de
Lune.
Lune I did clock as a in something else first.
Mhm.
That thing was Carboys, but still.
Alright. Oop. Let's see.
I think it's Alice.
It is Alice. I was going to say I'll let you guys decide this time.
Oh.
Who would you?
Yeah, because Nancy's doing the narration.
Yeah.
I don't mind doing Alice's voice because there's going to be dialogue between all three of them.
Yeah, and Alice tends to not speak very much.
Yeah, also that.
Okay. Let's do that then.
I suppose not. But we still need to investigate the cause. She cast a sideways look at Sojiro with those darkly shaded eyes of hers. Her voice shared the same cold indifference, making it abundantly clear that she had no intention of accepting him as a housemate.
Is it weird that I find those expression in anime girls hot? I think this is the first time I've ever admitted that, but that expression's just. Hi.
Hey.
No, Balance wasn't just admitting something embarrassing.
Damn it.
It's not embarrassing. It's perfectly normal.
Way to ruin a moment, Con. You know.
All right, guys, if you say.
All right. We'll have Kanye do the narrating this time since you'll be voicing Alice.
Go
Okay, hold on a
Kanye.
second. Ugh.
And you're fine with this. I do hope you haven't forgotten about what happened at the amusement park.
Alice's voice was a mixture of judgment and scrutiny. Yeah, I know that word. She was aware that, from an outsider's perspective, she and Naoko appeared dangerous. She wanted to know Sojiro was up to the challenge of living with such people.
I'll go ahead and do this. I wish it had all been a bad dream, but I remember it perfectly.
Above all else, it was the only way they would let him live. Alice responded apathetically, with a non-committal murmur. She silently placed a small object on the table with a clink. Spear into the kitchen.
Oh, continue. She pulled her pale fingers away from a small glass bottle. The glass, more pale blue than transparent, was enough to signify its high quality. With a crane-like motion, she removed the stopper. Even though this was the first time he had seen such a thing, something about it made him uneasy.
I love that even though it's not like Sojiro at all, we've all collectively agreed that his ha's sound like a duck quacking.
Huh?
The best part is that in the visual novel, I decided to reread some parts, and the official voice acting in the game does make him say it that way a lot of the time.
Yeah?
What?
Oh, I feel so justified.
You are
Wow.
100% justified.
We are absolved of any silliness here.
All right. Anyway, welcome back, Kanye. Go ahead with this line.
Was it that it made him sad, or... Alco's standoffish behavior only added to his concern. Alice once again fixed her eyes on Sojiro, who was bracing himself for the worst. The glint in her eyes was bewitching
Also deadly.
and pretty. With not a single emotion apparent on her face, she called his name.
I heard that.
Mm-hmm.
Shizuki.
Kanye wasn't here for earlier, was he?
No.
Sorry,
I won't bring it there again.
this line reads hilariously in my head.
Yeah. Huh?
The moment he responded to her whispered call, His surroundings began to transform.
I wonder, hold on. Let me see if I could do something. I'll just have to turn this on momentarily. Go ahead.
The air grew thick, so thick. It took a color and shape. The density and discomfort that coiled around his skin made it seem...
Oops.
Ah!
Sorry.
Density and comfort that coiled around the skin made it seem like the air had become words. Opening his mouth to gasp for air, the words invaded his lungs. Instinctively, he covered his mouth with his right hand and clutched his chest with his left, both hands appearing clear as mud. Even the thickest of mountain fogs never seized his senses like this. If he had to come up with an analogy, no words could quite describe it, but it was like he was standing in the pages of a newspaper. The first sense to adjust to this new sensation was his hearing. Then his breathing stabilized, yet the feeling of suffocation remained. There was nothing restraining him that he could see, but he felt an intense claustrophobia. Before he'd even felt shock at the sudden change, he reached out in an attempt to find an escape. But his outstretched hands only found emptiness. It seemed contradictory to a place with no walls, and a wide view could feel so cramped. Spirited away, Wojak points, in a dense fog. Back in the mountains, such superstitions never seemed real to him until now. And then, he finally noticed, a surprise to beat all surprises. The drawing room had not changed into another world at all. He knew this for certain because he could still see the room he was just in through the fog, as well as the two girls, Alka Aozaki and Alice Kwanji, watching him closely. It was simply a problem of perspective. The floor was dark and perfectly flat. Looking up, there the two of them stood. The two girls were like two impossibly gargantuan clouds, coldly looking down at him. Remembering the structure of the room and layout of the furniture, Sojo's unsurpassed candor finally grasped his predicament. The parade at the amusement park had nothing on this. Somehow, he was inside the glass bottle that Alice Kwanji produced only moments ago.
That was unexpected.
Marveling at Alice's wickedness, Alko glanced at the small bottle on the table.
It's the same as 2 nights ago, only this time he's awake.
Alko calmly mused. Alice, however, was not looking down at the bottle. Instead, her eyes were locked on Alko.
I'm surprised. I thought you'd be upset.
But I'm upset! Let me out of here! Get me out!
Not really. I thought about doing something similar. He needed to be taught a little lesson about magecraft anyway. You're saving me the trouble, to tell the truth. I'm not even mad. Though, this is pretty hardcore, even for me.
Then let me out!
Alko did not take her eyes off the bottle as she spoke. Although she did her best to feign indifference toward Alice's magecraft, she could not completely hide her curiosity. The figure inside the bottle, likely having caught on to what was happening, tried various things, like flailing its arms and sprinting around.
Please! I'm begging!
The surface of the bottle was cloudy, so it was hard to make out exactly what was happening inside.
By the the way, this looks totally different than the one you gave me.
This one took more time to create. The one I gave you was disposable and only made to isolate the subject. This one allows for two-way communication.
So you can't hear me!
Really? He doesn't seem to be replying, though.
I am!
You just can't hear him.
What the?
Alice said calmly, finally dropping her gaze to the bottle. Just then the figure inside stopped moving. It appeared only Alice had a connection to the world inside the bottle.
Lame. Only the caster gets to have fun.
Alco sighed, losing interest. Ignoring Alco, Alice opened her mouth as if to speak to someone not altogether there.
How about now? Still think this is the safest option?
The person she was talking to was none other than the one inside the bottle. She was, of course, referring to Sojiro's earlier comment. It was her way of testing the boy, who implied that living in this mansion seemed safe.
Suddenly trapping him in a bottle and interrogating him is pretty ruthless. But even more worrisome is her attachment to this mansion.
Then again, considering Alco had invited this witness to a house of mirrors for a fight to the death, she was in no position to criticize.
Yeah, Alco.
Jeez.
She made sure Alice did not let her emotions get the best of her, but for now she was content to observe as a bystander. After a moment, Alice's expression changed. She must have gotten an answer to her question. Without any way to tell what the situation was inside the bottle, Alco had no idea what the answer was, however. Only Alice's face was the one she had made when the boy she was talking to said what she wanted to hear.
I suppose I'm not one to talk, but...
For an instant, she glanced at Alco. Slightly shaking her head, she reached for the small bottle.
This Shizuki's quite a strange one.
She did his name with what seemed like a forlorn frown. Word.
Words.
As soon as she removed the stopper, the air in the room quivered. The boy, who had been casting a shadow on the wall until a minute ago, now leaned against it for support again. Alco turned around to face Sojiro right behind her, resting her elbow over the back of the sofa.
How do you feel?
What does it look like? Messed up.
Sojiro answered with unusual hostility.
That face.
Alco was reminded of his strange behavior, as she was sure that he would be scared or shocked, not angry.
If I hadn't already seen something similar in a dream, my heart probably would have stopped. I'm lucky it didn't. What I can't believe is why you felt the need to use rage. What the fuck? What I can't believe is why you felt the need to use magecraft on me. You could have just said it was scary and left it at that. Plus, I could hear the threatening things you said, Awazaki.
My sincerest apologies. But it is true that I wanted you to feel it for yourself. At least now you'll take magecraft seriously, won't you, Sojiro?
As if he wasn't about to get blasted to bits in the House of Mirrors. They didn't need to illustrate with a bottle.
Right. As much as he hated to admit it, she was right.
I guess they just needed to demonstrate the full breadth of all the ways that magecraft can be bad for you.
Sure.
Though it was not that he had taken Magecraft lightly, but merely that he couldn't understand it.
I still don't really get it though. Even after that experience, compared to the crazy stuff I've seen you do, Awazaki, whatever the heck just happened to me was hardly unbelievable.
See?
Yeah. What? Of course not. Alice and I are totally different. I already told you, even in our world, her magecraft is considered over the top and unspeakably horrible.
How rude. When it comes to which of us is more of a threat to human life, I think you're far more dangerous than me. And that's besides the point. I'm starting to harbor doubts about you even wanting to kill him in the first place. You must have been pretty soft on him to say he believes that he's safe here.
Well, of course I wanted to kill him. I don't know what he's told you, but you've got it all twisted. This guy doesn't realize he's in danger until he gets burned. And even then, he'd probably think, well, at least I'm still alive, and whistle all the way home. Isn't that right, Sojiro? Huh?
He had no idea why she was suddenly shouting, but he nodded anyway just to be safe. The drawing room had become awfully noisy. Alice sat watching the two at a complete loss.
All right, let's switch it up. We'll have Eryn do the narrating this time, and we'll have Kanye play as Aoko if she comes up. Okay, ready whenever you are.
Okay. And so, Sojiro accepted his supervised life in the mansion. And that he would be living under the same roof as two professional mages. Having experienced firsthand how dangerous that life could get, he was finally at peace with the situation.
I'll have you be Sojiro as well, Kanye.
Okay. If that's how it's gonna be, then oh well.
Mm-hmm.
Even if he did not seem to like it, he had thought it through in his own way and come to a clear resolution.
Okay, down to business. So, I know we said that you'd be under supervision, but we haven't really talked about how we'll be doing that, or the magecraft that is responsible for enforcing it. Let me start with a brief explanation.
Perhaps he was brought up to listen closely to lectures about new information, because Sojiro suddenly looked attentive. Also, Nancy, I was also trying to come up with the isekai title of this in my head.
It's not long enough.
Which on the Holy Night is just too elegant. We needed to come up with like a
I was
trash
thinking something
isekai
along
light
the
novel
lines
name.
of, I found out my student council president is a witch and now I'm her pet? Question mark, exclamation mark.
No, now I'm her prisoner? Question mark?
But you need to cater to the degens, so pet would be a lot better than prisoner.
Exactly. It's more
Ah.
salacious.
Oh, true. And inappropriate.
Precisely why.
He did say he was like a dog.
Less than
Lower
a
than a
dog.
dog.
Alice, on the other hand, kept her mouth shut in silent defiance.
First off, the time you'll be made to live here has been predetermined.
I'm realizing Alice isn't going to say much, so I'll actually have you voice Sojiro whenever he comes up, Nancy.
Oh gosh, okay.
In short, until the time of that period, if you don't tell anyone about us or die for some reason, you're free to go. Good so far, Alice?
God dang it. Okay, fine. I'll do this real quick. Indeed. Provided he refrains from angering us, that is. he has a chance of survival.
Yep, this is already off on the wrong foot.
Sojiro's head dropped like he knew what was coming.
That's enough, Alice. And you, shut up.
She scowled at the two of them, already at her wits' end.
As I was saying, having you live with us for the sake of...
Confidentiality.
Thank you. I was so stuck in my throat.
Oh,
Having you
okay.
live with us... Yeah, having you live with us for the sake of confidentiality means other problems are bound to come up. You'll likely be exposed to even more of our secrets. That's what has Alice been so bent out of shape.
Also, all the other students at school are gonna find out sooner or later.
Yeah,
Mhm.
when they see he's coming and going in the same direction as her.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now that Aoko mentioned it, Sojiro could see her point. With their target of observation under house arrest, the disclosure of more confidential information was inevitable.
Hold on a second. Doesn't that make me being here a little counterproductive?
It's not a problem. In the end, we'll just have you forget everything about us and about living here at all.
Why not just do that now? Have me forget?
Right, from the incident in the park onward, you'll forget everything. There's a kind of magecraft called runes that has the power to make one forget memories. It's a bit inhumane, but erasing memories seems a bit better than, well, erasing your life.
Kingyo. Bro.
Hi, Kingyo. Hi, Kingyo. Do I get a say in...
Sorry,
You
but
should
no
put a
objections.
Fishing game on your avatar's head for a bit.
Anyway, an amnesia rune is outside of our field of expertise, so it's going to take some time for us to find the rune and learn everything about it.
That explains your question, Nancy, as to
That
why.
sure does.
It's actually, like, pretty well done.
Well done.
Bravo.
In other words, that's when you get to leave. Until we find this rune, we're using your life as collateral, so keep your mouth shut. Alice's idea is that we destroy your five senses and be done with you to avoid the extra effort. So, Shizuki, what do you say? Fancy becoming a living statue?
Sojiro only understood about 80% of what Aoko had explained, and the last part about a living statue had gone straight over his head. When's Kanye's cool guitar riff happening? Soon, I'm sure. He had tried his best to visualize what Aoko was going on about, but the only thing he could conjure in his mind was an image of the mascot creature Kitsy.
Yeah, I'd rather not.
Aoko agreed with the bewildered Sojiro, neither one the wiser the other's misinterpretation.
Anyway, at most it will probably take about a month to find this amnesia room, and another 2 to put it to use. Until then, that means you'll be living with us. However, we can't just let you wander around without a clue what's going on. That's a surefire way to get yourself killed. I doubt you would be comfortable being left in the dark about us either, so starting now I'm going to fill you in on what it's like to be a modern magician. At the very least, it'll hopefully prevent any more misunderstandings.
Not that she thought this country bumpkin had any idea of old or new anyway. The thought brought a smug grin to her lips.
Let's leave a tour of the mansion for later, and start with who and what mages are. And don't worry, you don't need to understand everything right away. You're an outsider after all, so just bite off only what you can chew.
Sojiro nodded obediently for Aoko's professorial instructions. This was Aoko's way of telling him not to ask questions when he did not understand something.
Understandable, considering he'd be asking every waking moment.
And though Sojiro had taken issue with her statement, he meekly obeyed, knowing better than to object now. Aoko nodded approvingly at his attentiveness and started her lecture. Her long, long lecture. So this is exposition for the reader, right?
Let's start with mages, magicians, basically.
This is actually Kanye just explaining Type Moon to everyone.
Alright, so guys, I need you to understand. Since it doesn't concern you, I'll skip the part about how magecraft and magic are not the same. All you need to remember is that they are two different things. Mages are an absolute rule and must operate in society. Naturally, mages will find out about other mages, so it's only a crime if an outsider like you finds out about one of us. A crime punishable by death, I should add. The reason being, the more magecraft is exposed, the weaker it becomes. You'll often hear us say mystic or mystery, which comes from a Greek word that means to shut the mouth. It follows that magecraft would cease to be if its secrets were revealed.
I need to look that up. Mystic
Yeah.
in Greek.
Is that true? Etymologically, does mystery actually mean Greek for shutting your
yeah.
mouth?
To close the eyes or lips.
Huh.
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 That's what comes up on Google anyway.
Let's see. What is Babla? Okay, yeah, that might be too much of a deep dive. But I always question these claims, especially from a anime visual novel. As much as I like this visual novel, I have to question it.
Civilization has always treated the unexplored and the unknown as things to be feared because of their mysterious nature. But we don't hide ourselves because we fear persecution if we're discovered. What we fear is the loss of the unknown itself. When our arts are revealed, they become weaker, so by protecting our society, we're also protecting our own future.
Oh, secrecy.
I'm not clear on how magecraft works yet, but I think what you're saying is that if you don't keep it a secret, it gets weaker? So then, does that mean you got weaker now that I saw you, Aozaki?
No, not particularly. Let me explain in a little more detail. When I say it loses power, I mean magecraft as a whole will get weaker in the future. I'm not talking about individuals. The unwritten law that thou shalt conceal thyself was an adage from a bygone age, but at some point it became law of the highest order. It's like laws in a civilized society. We like to think it's human nature to punish crime and immortality, but ultimately a structural solution is needed to maintain order.
Immorality.
Immorality. Crimes were left unpunished, the society we strive so hard to build would collapse. And what we may just consider to be a crime is dissemination and vulgarization of the mystic. Merely immoral things like murder, well, those are a matter of perspective, and they generally aren't considered outright crimes. And the good for nothing bunch responsible for imposing this law is a group called the Mages Association. Think of them as a labor union. The phrase "make eternal the mysticism of magecraft" is nothing more than a rule they created to perpetuate magecraft itself. Nevertheless, the rule is absolute. Those who violate it cease to exist in the magical world. Or rather, it would be difficult for them to go on living at all. For us, that's our life as mages, I guess. In order to protect it, we had no choice but to erase you, the witness to our magecraft. Don't give me those puppy dog eyes. Just because you know a little about our lives doesn't mean we're not fessing up to what happened at the amusement park. It was our decision to try and kill you. It wasn't anyone else's fault. So if you're going to blame anyone, blame me.
Okay, back to the topic, though?
Oh, this is
Ah.
still Aoko.
It is still Alco.
Okay, back to the topic. In the past, mages were recognized in society enough for it to be considered an occupation, but they took their own magecraft with them to their graves. I don't know what led things to getting so twisted, but even the profession itself has been kept secret these days. They didn't go that far. The association feared that in the distant future, magecraft would be used and the association would fall apart. We had reached a point in where everything became explainable through human knowledge, from the building blocks of nature to the fabric of the cosmos, once considered to be the realm of the gods. Maybe the founders believed the magecraft would become the last bastion for the unknown, for mystics that which is beyond human reach. Or maybe they thought that in the long run, magecraft would eventually become meaningless. Whatever the reason, mages hid their identities and passed on their individual rituals in secret, and since they couldn't pass it on to outsiders, it was only natural that they taught it to their descendants. Alice and I are both products of generations of lineage. The Mages Association I mentioned earlier is a vast organization that governs those magecraft holders still dedicated to their field. Mages think of them as their ruling body. The association is actually made up of a bunch of factions, and the vast majority of mages are affiliated with the London chapter. The law to conceal ourselves was one of the three main principles. If a mage reveals their secret to a civilian, the association is quick to make an example of them. But even if the mage doesn't get punished, the witness should still be eliminated to protect the mage and their family's magecraft.
And that was the end of the first part of the lecture. Alko paused for a moment. Sojiro was doing his best to process the information.
Ready to move on?
Sure, but let me see if I understand so far. Mages used to hide their identities, not for their own sake, but for the sake of magecraft. Now they're more concerned with hiding themselves. And if you break the rules, you'll be punished by a place called the Association? Does that mean that you two are members of the Association?
No, we're freelance, though we walk in similar circles. They're simply the largest organized group. Even though no one asked them to, they've taken it upon themselves to police the world of magecraft. So no matter how affiliated we are as mages, if we break the rules, we'll get punished anyway.
Jerks.
Right. Okay, I think I got the gist of it.
It's alright, just focus on the parts important to you. Next is magecraft, though I've barely learned enough to talk about it myself.
Huh?
Sorry, I forget I said that.
Huh?
I touched on this already, but these days magecraft is losing its meaning. You created for fire a long time ago, when there were no lighters. That was enough to count as a mystic feat, but nowadays life is awfully convenient, right? You of all people can appreciate that.
Sojiro nodded with a glum look on his face. He had been made painfully aware of such conveniences. Difficult tasks that would occupy an entire day of work in the mountains could be performed easily here. For him, having been brought up in the mountains without electricity or running water, city life was, by definition, magic. He only wished it would not be such back-breaking work to adapt to said conveniences.
Oh. I do think that creating fire without tools should be a god's job, though.
Even though we've worked out how to do it more efficiently with the flamethrower,
Sojiro wasn't sure how to answer Aoko. It would have been easy for him to ask Alco how much accumulated effort she thought it had taken humans to imitate those gods. But he knew it would come across as an insult.
From what I just saw, I was under the impression that magecraft could do anything. But maybe I misunderstood.
He glanced at the glass bottle on the table. Mentally, he sighed in relief. He still had not come to terms with the fact that he had been trapped inside that tiny thing. However...
Oh, that's a misunderstanding, alright. Magecraft wasn't all-powerful, why would anyone bother to learn it?
Alco puffed out her chest as she chided him.
It might take some doing, but there's nothing Magecraft can't do. Granted, some users are able to trick you into thinking something's possible when it really isn't. But since we were born into this world, there's nothing that we can't do within its limits. Besides true magic, of course, but we'll get into that some other time. What I'm trying to say is that Magecraft doesn't create miracles, it's only the process that's miraculous. To produce a real miracle, you need true magic. A great mage is someone who can fly a passenger jet with only their own magecraft. Meanwhile, a magician deals in making the impossible possible. Which is why we might just turn out to be the last magicians.
Focus, Alco.
Alice had been quietly listening until she muttered her rebuke. As if Alco had crossed a line.
He doesn't need to know that. Shouldn't we be educating Shizuki on the dangers of living with us?
Sorry, you're right, slip of tongue. Anyway, mages spend every waking moment experimenting in magecraft and would become devils in a heartbeat in order to protect their magecraft, by which I mean their family secrets. Their lairs, which we call workshops, are like fortresses packed with all kinds of magical mechanisms. Like traps that kill intruders before they even know what hit them. It's all to protect our secrets. This mansion is no different. If you wind up trapped like you were before because you wandered around carelessly, even I won't be able to help you. So be careful of the dark. You might even find yourself stuck inside a mirror. Seriously, that can actually happen.
Sojiro so hoped they would provide him with a general idea of what to watch out for, but he passed, knowing that he was unlikely to get a straight answer.
That was a lot to take in one go, but...
Yeah,
no.
I think this is Alco. Yeah.
Yeah. There's lots to take in one go, but my point is, keep your nose out of where it doesn't belong.
So, like, everything? Like, literally don't touch anything?
Pretty much. Just stay in your
Even
room.
though we're going, literally, even though we're going to erase your memory in the end, there are still things that we'd have to kill you for seeing.
Jeez. Got it. The mansion has rules I have to follow, I understand. Is there anything else I should...
His eyes wandered as he trailed off mid-sentence, pondering. He understood that the mansion was more dangerous than outside, and that magecraft needed to stay secret. But the explanation seemed to contradict his current problem. For starters, how had he managed to witness something that they took such pains to keep hidden?
I'm sorry, it just occurred to me. Mages are all united under the organization called the Association, right? If that's the case, why were you attacked by that puppet, Aozaki? If its master was a mage, wouldn't that mean that you were fighting an ally? Am I missing something here?
I was saving that for last. Normally, this would be the point in the story where you'd say I made it all up, or laugh it off. Even if you experienced it, the existence of magecraft shouldn't be something you accept so easily.
Aoko scratched her head as though troubled by how Sojiro could take every word at face value. Across from her, Alice's face betrayed no expression, but she shared the same opinion.
Is that so weird?
It's mega weird. In fact, you've been weird from the get-go. A normal person would be shocked, scared, and unwilling to accept our existence. Why do you of all people believe me when I say I'm a magician?
In retrospect, this question should have been posed at the House of Mirrors. Back then, though Sojiro was surprised by seeing the phenomenon of magecraft for the first time, he showed no surprise or discomfort toward Aoko, the mage wielding it. Feeling the probing stares of the two girls, no, the two mages, made Sojiro feel uneasy. From where he was standing, their suspicion was suspicious in and of itself.
There's no reason at all, really. Up in the mountains, people just accept things as they are. We don't deny something we see in front of us just because we don't have the knowledge to explain it. You said it yourself. Lighters and magic might as well be the same thing, right?
You know, if more people had the thought process of Sojiro just there, I think life would be a little bit easier for a lot of people.
Though they weren't really the same thing to him anymore, he added quietly before shutting up. What he said about those innocent days in the mountains had come from the heart. And the words resonated with not only Aoko Aozaki, but also Alice Konji. It was something everyone should have. Principles to stand by. Indeed, to this boy, those words were an unshakable truth.
Some things are the way they are. I see what you're saying.
She was impressed, if only slightly. If this boy, no matter how much of an outlier he was, could accept the things around him, he would be able to get through this just fine.
That's a good way of explaining it, Sojiro. I guess the fault's with us for not believing you sincerely.
Much like when Aoko met Sojiro for the first time. In that classroom on his first day, Sojiro took everything that was happening in his stride. The memory brought a better smile to Aoko's face.
All right, let's change it up. Let's have.
About how much longer is the chapter, by the way?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that. Now, it shouldn't be too long. We'll play it by heart. We'll go for another 10 minutes, and if it's still going on, we'll cut it off from there. So
Okay.
let's switch to Nancy playing as Alice and Eryn playing as Sojiro.
Okay.
And I'll do the narrating.
Okay.
And
And Kanye's
Kanye.
still Aoko?
That's Nancy. Did I say Alice?
Oh,
I
said
I meant
Alice.
I meant Aoko, sorry.
Oh, okay.
And we'll have Kanye be Alice whenever she appears.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. So go ahead, Nancy.
Alright, let's get back on track. To your earlier question, for various reasons, there are mages that don't belong to the association at all. They do as they please behind the association's back and fight other mages for their personal gain. That puppet's master is one of those types. To those jerkwads, we're a convenient, easy target. But just because we have an arrangement with the association doesn't mean we're one of them. It's not like they'll come to save the day if we're at risk of being killed.
But aren't mages forbidden from using magecraft?
As long as it's not in public, the association turns a blind eye. Heck, they practically encourage fights between mages, as long as it's kept a secret. Like, if we don't use it, we'll get rusty or something. Anyway, the attacks on us are a different story and have nothing to do with the fact have to do with the fact that we own land. Is this a land struggle?
Oh no. By land, you mean this house?
Oh, please. Just this house? Alice and I hold the rights to the entirety of Misaki City. We're administrators of the whole region.
Oh.
You guys own the whole freaking city?
What? Administrators? You own all the land in Misaki?
Dazzled, Sojiro looked away. He was sure he could see a halo of light around Amako. He had only been renting an apartment for 2 weeks, but he was already aware of how magnificent the prospect of owning land in the city might be. The word Sojiro was trying to articulate was rich. He shook all over with an emotion he did not fully grasp.
Hold it. You're thinking about this all wrong. When we say land, we're talking about the ownership and control of spiritual grounds as mages. The Awazaki family might be a minor player, but we've got old roots here as mages, which is why Misaki falls under our jurisdiction. When I say we administer the land, I'm talking about a place where spiritual power is distorted and gathers easily. This type of land has always been valuable, and it's vital to the experimentation and practice of magecraft. After all, the 3 pillars of what makes a successful mage are a strong workshop, lots of disciples, and fertile spiritual grounds. No one living in a house like that ain't rich, shut you. To us, owning administered land and a residence to live in are number 1 on the priority list.
Sojiro let her continue while wondering exactly who these 2 girls were to have achieved both ambitions already.
However, most sacred grounds have already been claimed by the association. There's nothing left for anyone else. Rogue and landless mages have no choice but to borrow lands from the organization in exchange for a monthly donation. They're basically worker bees, slaving away for the top dogs of the association. But this land here, it's been in my family for hundreds of years. The association can't get their grubby hands on it. Do you understand what I'm saying, Sojiro? To rogue mages, our land is the juiciest fruit there is.
Sojiro nodded to himself, unsure whether to call the conversation mundane or outright disturbing.
I get it. So you're basically fighting over the land.
Pretty much. But because the administered land of Misaki is so minor, its challengers have all been third-rate. The enemy this time is probably some small fry thinking this place was low-hanging fruit. Though for now, we're in a ceasefire because of your intrusion.
That's you, Kanye.
Yeah. That's enough about administered land, Aoko. Shizuki seems to understand the point that there are other mages out there apart from us. If any danger exists, it's more likely to arise as a result of
What?
Oh.
You just cut off.
Are you still there?
becoming involved. I'm alive. What happened? Anyway.
Just stuck into a bottle for a second.
If any dangers exist, it's more likely to arise as a result of him becoming involved in one of our battles.
He'll be fine. Besides, this guy has 0 trace of magical energy, so there's no chance of him being sensed. Plus, he has less tactical value than a watchdog, so he shouldn't be a target anyway.
Damn!
Ouch. We
Say
just
that
have to
about the
make
guy
sure
who
he
saved
doesn't-
your life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right? At risk of his own life, might I add.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to make sure he doesn't escape before we can find the amnesia rune.
Alice silently stared her partner down. Their ideas of involving Sojiro differed greatly in both gravity and risk. Aoko's lack of experience had led her to believe that Sojiro would not get directly involved in any fighting. It was an honest and rational thought. Aoko despised wasted action, so it was natural for her to expect the same frugality from her enemies. However, there were those in this world who could not tell right from wrong until it was too late.
No one knows what the future will bring. I only hope that when the time comes, we won't regret this.
Alright, I think we'll go ahead and save it here then. Since it is now 9 o'clock my time. Pretty late for you guys. Before we go, I think I can go here.
Should be just
Yeah.
enough time to put my Snorlax to sleep.
Oh.
Snorlax.